Hi, Jill. It's so lovely to
Hey,
see you.
Nadia. So lovely to see you.
So, before we begin, I would love people to know a little bit just about you, who you are, where you're from, your family, anything important that feels like you want to share.
Sure. So my name is Jill. I'm 39 years old. I'm originally from Rhode Island. Spent the first 25 years of my life there and then a dozen in New York, mostly in New York City. And just in the last couple of weeks, I came home to the city after having been away for the last few years. I have a background in functional nutrition and have had a career that has spanned all over the map in the helping profession and along those lines. And I'm married with a small rescue dog at home with us as well. And yeah, those are some of the basics.
Thank you so much. Yes, Dog Mums Unite.
Yes.
She's been a great part of your recovery.
She absolutely has.
We will speak
Absolutely.
more about the little house elf in a little while.
Wonderful.
So, Jill, before we started to work together, could you tell me a little about what you were dealing with?
So I have suffered from a constellation of complex chronic illnesses throughout the span of my life, and they became serious and life-altering by the time I was 12. And there are decades spanning between that time and now, of course.
Yes.
In the handful of years before you and I started working together, I came to realize that I had recently moved into a home that had toxic mold in the walls and basically decades of illness, which I had been managing very well. I'd lived a very full life. I was working full time, out most nights of the week, really feeling well.
Yes.
This event took me so far down that I became bedridden.
Yes.
I was not able to be out in the world. There were only a few places I could spend time in because my system became so mold and chemical sensitive. And this entire host of complex chronic conditions came back rearing their heads and new ones developed as well. So I had made some progress in the handful of years before you and I had started working together, but I had plateaued.
Indeed.
And other events in my personal life arose that made some of those old symptoms and new symptoms resurface. And I really came to realize in the limited mind-body work that I had done to that point, that there was absolutely a connection, and that if I was going to take my recovery further, I was going to have to go further with this work. And that's when I reached out to you.
Good for you, Jill. It has been an incredibly brave, long journey, I know. So just to notice that so many of us, it's not that this suddenly landed out of nowhere.
Right.
We had signs and worked really well to try and manage it. And then for so many of us, there's that one last thing, one last insult to the system.
Yeah.
And the whole body, mind, nervous system just says no, like
Yes.
shut down or freeze or immobilize. And that's where we began, right?
Yes. And of course, now knowing that even in the healthiest years of my life where I was highly functional, understanding now how indeed, just as you said, it was just years of managing well enough, and knowing that what I have learned from you over the last few years has shown me completely new ways of being and in ways I'd never experienced before, even in my healthiest days.
I am so glad, Jill, so glad. Hurrah for you.
Me too.
Before we did start, it's good for people to know, because you were a practitioner, you were hugely knowledgeable, you had self-advocated since you were a kid to look after yourself. Yeah. What things did help you before this? What was helpful to you? And did you do anything that just blew the lid off and was really unhelpful?
So really helpful to me prior, one of the first things that I really turned to in my young life was learning more about nutrition. And again, that's where my interest deepened over the decades, where I went back to school to pursue master's work in that field. So tuning into my nutrition, being out in nature was huge for me. And especially after having lived in such a major metropolis, I learned really early on, especially in that time, how integral to my health it was to be out in unadulterated nature as much as I could be. Yes. Being with loved ones, spending time doing things that I loved, like really just doing things that brought me joy and tuning into my own system. Those were things I already understood to an extent, but learned so much more about in our time together, for sure.
Wonderful. Thank you. It's funny to hear you describe those things too. They're the kind of ingredients that every highly sensitive person needs.
Absolutely. Yeah. And of course, spending time with loved ones, but also spending plenty of time by ourselves and, you know, really delving into the things that we love and taking that space and quiet for ourselves.
I love this. Did you know you were highly sensitive?
I did. I did. But I think such a major difference now in learning more about that is really part of my issue, is that I tried so hard to push against that.
Indeed.
It was always seen as such a shortcoming of, oh, you're so sensitive, but this is how you still have to participate in the world.
Yes.
So I did know that, but I didn't really understand how I could shift things for myself to live far better, both within my body and my life, and understanding that better.
Indeed, that working with it, like, yes, we're highly sensitive, and in a unsafe feeling system that becomes very difficult, and society tells us it's not great.
Yeah.
But when we feel safe on the inside and we honor it, it's a superpower.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
I love this. Okay. So how is this different, our work? How is it different to what you've done before, Jill?
I have gained such an in-depth understanding of how my symptoms first began and what continued to perpetuate them, and why my system remained on such a high alarm, even though on paper, you know, I had other practitioners around me saying, hey, you are doing all of the quote unquote right things to be well. And how I explained it would be to say that it felt like in doing all of these right things, it permitted me to walk a tightrope of sorts, where if I did all of these things, if I ate perfectly, if I got just the right amount of movement where I wasn't overtaxing myself, but I was able to move my body, if I was getting sunshine, if I was spending time connecting with others, but just really walking so narrowly, I could remain okay enough. I could make myself appear as if I was functioning well, but just one tiny deviation away from the plan, and I would have fallen off the tightrope and I was well down into a very muddy ditch. Yes. So in learning to connect with myself in such a more profound way, I was able to understand again what caused these issues, but also it allowed me to step off of the damn tightrope. Yeah.
It's amazing how that realization, I had it too. Perfect diet, perfect everything, perfect being the operative word here too.
Yes. We don't have any problem with perfectionism.
No, not at all.
Nothing to see here.
And that tightrope that you can, because there's so much pressure, there is so much pressure, and even the context of us trying to recover and take care of ourselves to keep up, to contribute to the capitalism machine, to appear in a certain way so that we are functional, because to be disabled is not okay.
No.
To slow down is not okay. Rest is not given any kind of quality that is valuable in our society.
No.
So that tightrope, it's like internal trying to stay safe, but it's also this external having to keep up. And yeah, it's exhausting.
It is. And just speaking about that now and feeling that story run through me, it is just, even now, having that moment of visceral realization of, oh yes, that's what was being carried through the course of a lifetime until I couldn't carry it anymore. My body wouldn't let me carry it anymore.
It's so lovely to hear someone say that now, because when the body does say no, we often feel betrayed. We're angry with our body. Why don't you do what I want you to? And to hear you come in and say my body couldn't do it anymore.
It was never her fault.
Indeed.
It was never her fault. There was never anything wrong with her. Yeah.
How is that to say and feel and mean now?
It's such a relief. It's such a relief. It feels, I mean, it's one of the greatest gifts of my life to really embody that understanding. For a long time, I did intellectually understand that, but it is very different inhabiting that in my skin and in my bones, understanding that.
It is. And that leads me to ask, you know, our work, and I let you know at the beginning, we're not going to be achievements focused. This is not results based because we are trying to provide enough safety for a sweet system that has gone into freeze or shutdown to coax it back online little bit by bit. So our work was very much about relationship with you, building relationship with your body, and these younger parts of you, and not being in domination over the body, being in relationship with. How was that for you, as opposed to this kind of tightrope of I manage my symptoms and get where I'm going?
Again, just relief comes to such mind that I think it really became especially important to me in beginning to work with you and realizing that, yes, this work can be very difficult. It's not full of cotton candy and rainbows and sunshine. There's no doubt about that. And you've always been upfront about that. But there is and was very early on this feeling of relief and peace within myself.
Yes.
That really went to show me, especially all of the things I was doing to manage and control my conditions, to feel such freedom and truly understanding that I could put those things down, that instantly brought such relief and I think buoyancy to my system as well.
I love that word. The body even did
rising. Yes. Yeah.
It's really the opposite of chronic fatigue, right? When we feel like we're made of lead and there is no lightness. We've pushed so hard and this body has tried so hard to cope that it just shuts down.
Yeah.
And then the relief of reconnection, like I want to build relationship with you and understand. So much more safety that we can actually start to come online a little bit.
Yes. Yeah. And that little bit goes a very long way, especially at the beginning.
Indeed. Yes. It's that little, like, I'm in here underneath.
Yes. Underneath the rubble of all of the things. Yeah. I can remember being a kid and the visual that I had was, you know, kind of standing cross-legged, putting weight on one leg with just one finger extended in the pile of all of the things. All of the things that had to be maintained, all of the symptoms, all of the heft, all of the weight. And coming into this work is really learning how to start dismantling that.
Yes, it
putting it down.
It is. It's a really good way to put it. And so many of those layers were protection. How do you protect a vulnerability? How do you try and feel safe, embrace when you feel unsafe? And those layers need to be slow because they were protective.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I'm so glad, Jill, to hear this. It's been wonderful watching you go through those layers and learn to be kind to yourself whilst you do it.
Yes. Yes. That self-compassion. Yeah. Even again, in small doses goes a very long way.
Indeed.
On this journey.
What have you enjoyed about healing this way?
The first thing that comes to mind is putting down that white knuckling control over symptoms and figuring out how to keep on that tightrope to be able to participate in life. It's been about putting down the timeline for healing. And I will say, for someone like myself who's been at this for decades, you know, really very patiently putting that down and saying, hey, this recovery is going to take what it takes, whatever it is. The gentleness that comes along with this approach the kindness and compassion towards self, and really learning and understanding that bumps along the way are normal and natural, to be expected. They're nothing to be upset about or to fight with. And yeah, just being able to be gentle and still making such, not only still making such progress, but making much better progress in what I know to be true embodied healing. There are so many things that I've done through the course of my journey that have absolutely been helpful, that have kept me going. This is the first time in my life at almost 40 where I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that this is the work that is bringing me to full recovery, because I understand the moving parts of all of this. And that is so beautiful as well, too, is really over time getting to know. And of course, this is a lifelong process. I'll continue to learn and grow through this. But to have my body back into this process has been wonderful, being gentle and slow and forgiving and kind.
Indeed. So getting my body back.
Yeah.
Dissociation was a good friend to this system, not being in the body, because it was such a tough place to be, which is so common with trauma, so common with chronic pain and illness, that we tap out.
Yeah.
And realizing that and starting to come back in the body, how has that been?
This has been a huge piece of the puzzle for me.
Yes.
This has been the most major piece that you and I have uncovered together. This has been the major piece that any other modality or person approach that I've worked with, it was just something that I was incredibly blind to, because the trauma that I endured in my young life was so covert.
Indeed.
That being said, it was still incredibly meaningful to my system, enough to precipitate really hard-hitting, crippling chronic illnesses. Just the knowledge of that. It's been one of the hardest things to approach. You know, going back decades, I would say I would do anything to get well. I would do anything. And I won't insert some of the really gross, examples that I used to say, I'd do anything to be well.
I've been there. You are not alone here.
Yes. And yet, just the really coming into contact with the reality, the pain of what was driving this at times was just incredibly difficult, and has been a really incredibly difficult journey. But it's something that I wouldn't change for anything, because my goodness, the truth has a space here that I was never allowed in my younger life. And just the knowledge of that, and being able to very, very slowly, incrementally, you've walked me through this so gently, so intentionally, that it was able to keep my system safe, and I was able to keep my system safe through this. But that has been, I think, the most pivotal piece of understanding and what I need to heal and what I need to shift moving forward in my life.
It's a very tender process to help us come into contact. And as you know, I share a similar childhood background to you, to learn about it safely enough.
Yeah.
But it's crucial, we know, because the self-blame in some small way is there until we understand.
Yeah.
And we have to retrace a little and come into contact with our body, what we stored, what wasn't safe enough to process. And as one of my teachers, Gabor Mate, said to us, the truth will set you free, but it'll piss you off first.
That's a really lovely way of putting it, Gabor. That's a very sweet, gentle way of putting it.
It's
what this
not
can
easy.
feel like. Yes. It's not easy, but also in feeling the difficulty of that, and also in, shall we say, adjusting some of my relationships with my family of origin. Just some of the response and pushback I've received from that has also shown me very much, as very deliberate and gentle as I've tried to be about this, I have learned much more through this process in stepping back into my body, into my own power, into myself, just how much of that still wasn't just part of my younger parts.
Absolutely.
It was part of my current self as well. So these adjustments, and this is ongoing, as you know.
Indeed.
This is a dance that I'm still very much working with and trying to figure out how to move forward. But in doing this work, it has revealed to me how absolutely critical this piece is. And again, even with addressing all of these other parts of this condition, and there are many, if this piece had not been addressed, I think I would still be on that tightrope.
Agreed. I've watched your system come to start to be here in your felt senses, for us to grow capacity slowly to start to connect back to those things, to gain enough nervous system capacity to stay in the body and feel enough flexibility too, that you can have an uh-oh and you can come back and re-engage. Plus, as we're talking about now with family of origins and negotiating things here, as that capacity to stay in the body and feel safe has grown, boundaries came back again. And they were so needed and have been so important for your body to come out of freeze.
Absolutely. There were no boundaries.
Yes.
In any way within any of my relationships, but especially within that family of origin. And unfortunately, to this point, that is still not understood within that dynamic from across the aisle there. But yes, even understanding through the work that we've done together that I was dissociating, and so easily I had spent so much time dissociated. And I have a background in psychology as well, by the way. We have similar educational backgrounds there too. And even with that background, even with, feeling like I was seeing things for what they were, I really did not have an understanding of how much that played into what I was going through in my body and with my system. And now just being able to understand so much faster, like, oh, I can catch myself so much faster. Yeah, when this is happening, and having the tools now to slowly, gently, compassionately bring myself back home.
Yeah. It's such an important point you raised, that it still happens, right?
Yes.
We have a system that grew up learning to protect itself in fight, flight, freeze, checking out. Of course, it happens. It's like this whole internal map used to be unsafety.
Yes. Yeah. And not understanding that, not even knowing that.
Not even knowing it.
It's just the way things were.
Exactly. It's your known, your stable known. Yeah. And now the difference is that we're online enough to be able to recognize, and it's not something bad or wrong.
No, it's not.
And we can create safety and come back in. And every time we do that in our days with activity, relationships, other things, one of those red flags turns a little blue.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like building a new map. It is.
Yeah.
So thank you for naming that it continues for us. For those of us with developmental trauma, this is a process. And the rewards happen now because we get to know ourselves, we're living more.
Yes.
But we know that further down the line, it'll get even easier too.
That's precisely it. And I think it's so wonderful to highlight that. Yeah, you don't need to, there, first of all, as you all know, there is no such thing as getting to the finish line with this work. This is a lifelong process, but just, and relative to everything else I've done and explored, this is still a relatively new process for me, but there's been enough work done in this way, on this level to this point where I am fully functional in my body again, and I'm able to live life.
I know. Yeah. I mean, us discussing recently, we were talking about your move home. Now I was saying, Jill, how are you going to help your system settle and orient? And dance came up, and farmers markets, and walks with little doggo Marcy. And, the ingredients of a life well lived.
Yes, exactly. And I've healed well enough to be back in my home. Again, I'm in New York City, and at the worst of my illness, I couldn't even spend time here. It was never a thought that we'd be able to be back here again. That was very early on dismissed as, okay, that was in your past. That's it. And for me, there's never been another place that has felt like such home, that it's a joy beyond what I can share in words, what it means to be back here and to have healed enough to be back here in this space and living a new chapter. And as we've also discussed, it's not just being back at home, it's being back in this space as a very different person who's grown in so many different ways and has healed in so many different ways. And so the world available to me here is bigger and brighter now than it ever was. And that is beyond words to describe what that feels like. It's such an incredible, incredible life-giving joy.
Oh, Jill, you deserve every little iota of that joy. And I'm so glad you can feel it in here too.
Oh, and I feel it, guys. Yeah. Yeah.
So with that opening and being different as you come back now, how has your relationship with yourself changed?
Oh my goodness, to put this to words.
Indeed.
I'm so much more connected to her.
Yes.
And compassionate with her and checking in so much more with her to see what she actually needs. So my whole life was spent on autopilot, which was especially interesting to learn about myself because I thought that I was someone who really knew.
Oh, it's right.
It was all here. And so just inhabiting my body in such a more profound way and really tending to myself in a way that I would tend to a best friend and you know, the way that I attempted to attend to other people in my life. It was always, you know, I'm sure also as a woman and an eldest daughter and living in the Western world, all of these things, that was always the focus. And that was always how I was, you know, brought up to who and what else can we focus on? And now so much more, it's the word gentle keeps coming up, but just gently checking in. How are you doing? What do you need right now? Do you need a glass of water? Would that feel good?
Yeah, there we go.
Would it feel good to step out and get a little bit of sunshine before you sit back down and continue working on this project? Just really having a presence and an attention to self in a way that I did not have before, really at all.
There's such music to my ears. This is the foundation of how do we pay kind attention and how do we start to notice how much conditioning, familial, gender, society takes us offline. And if we're not home, how will the system feel safe and connected to? So to hear you say this, that gentle, you know, we say like you're checking in with your puppy or you know, don't glare at it, don't come in at the American government, just that real
I love that so much.
It's true. It's how we heal, right? Like feel better.
Yes.
And the gentleness of checking in and connecting back to healthy impulses, connecting back to, you know, as women too, our body goes like this. How do we feel in different stages of our cycle? How are our resources today? What do we want to do? Is it a day to stretch? Is it a day to back off a little?
Yeah. And not just whatever's on the calendar.
Exactly.
This is what's happening.
Because then you're back on the tightrope.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
the tightrope,
yes. Yeah. A lot more flexibility, a lot more kindness. What have been the biggest lessons that you've learnt, you know, about your nervous system, about you as a person? What really stands out for you that has mattered?
That I have so much more say over my life and my health. Again, I thought that with all of the things I was trying to do, that I was able to control this situation.
Yes. Bless us.
You can't control anything in life, but yes, I can manage and control this. Yeah, it's shown me that through mindfulness and being able to tune in and to give my body what it needs, which is very different than what I thought that it needed. that has shifted everything. And I know that doesn't, I don't know, Nadia, the way I'm putting this may not sound like anything.
Oh, no, go for
like
it.
Big or massive, or like, yes, this is the key, but it really is within these very small, basic shifts in tuning into self and reestablishing that mind-body connection, and knowing that our bodies are not something to manage. And even, right down to, away from these conditions and symptoms, even, again, I think coming forth, like, as women in this society, we need to look a certain way. We need to manage our external selves in a certain way, so that we can be okay enough to be in the world. I've, through this journey, have tried and have, tried to learn to tune in and shift even within that end of things, not only inside, but the outside of my body, my environment, surroundings, like what is tuned into me, what matters to me. And again, just continuing to dismantle old programming, deciding for me, my system, my life, my journey, what is it that matters enough to take the forefront of my attention, and what I'm tending to, and not just, again, going along with the rat race, the programming, the shoulds, all of these things. I wish like, there's really not, I find anyway, I haven't found it, if there is one, a sexy way really to put all of these things.
But it is sexy, because
I mean, it is to me.
It is.
Yes.
But
this is the sexiest, but
it is. It's very fundamental, that choice. Like what trauma and chronic illness, this whole thing that happens to us when our system feels overwhelmed, it takes away that feeling of efficacy, of choice, of internal connection. So what I'm hearing is I didn't realize, or I'd lost connection with that power of choice and the resource and inner safety and connection to be able to orient to my values, what matters to me, and start to notice the mismatches out here of how things just sweep us away and don't feel good, and to keep reorienting here, because there is choice.
There is choice, and to an extent that I did not understand, I was giving away that power, that choice, that sovereignty, that again felt very normal and natural to me to have been operating in the way that I was. That this work just really blew the lid off for me of so much more of what's possible in that realm.
Feels good, right?
It feels so good. It means everything. It means everything. Yeah.
So outside of our work, because it takes a village, and I am so supportive of people finding other practices and things that support their internal orientation. I know you've done some yoga that has been helpful.
Very slow for me.
Very, very slow. Thank you for saying. Okay.
Everything I've done, even today, we're still moving very
really
slowly,
gently.
Fully functional, but still very gentle and very slow, knowing that.
Oh, I hear you.
Yeah.
My yoga practice was 7 minutes on the floor for months. So
Understood.
That slow and steady of not going up to capacity, not approaching capacity, backing off, and that gentle consistency. What else has helped you outside? I know skating came back online a little while ago.
So something that was so beautiful for me to turn back to for me was ice skating. It's something that I had done from the time I was 4 years old. And when I was in my teens, I was forced to give it up due to these chronic conditions. And it's so interesting now. There's a renaissance, actually. And I think within the work that we're doing here, there's also a greater sense of what's going on in the bigger world around us, of people kind of tuning into themselves in a different way, which is so beautiful to see. And one of them is really seeing not only myself, but other people turning back to sports like ice skating. Like, I have found other women our age who are rallying to get back on the ice and back to practicing, and saying it's not all about testing and competitions and just being the best at your game. You don't have to do that to be out there and to enjoy something. And that's something else I was raised on, which is why I stopped. Yeah. So turning back, satisfying those younger parts who fell in love with skating so young has been so nourishing. Just to play and to not be out there and being driven towards, well, I need to accomplish this and that out there in order to feel good about doing this. No, it's just even feeling the edges of my blades gliding on the ice and to feel that rhythm come into my knees and my hips. Dreamy. And it is just, and being able to feel that in such a completely different way. So that has been a pivotal part of coming back into my body for sure.
Oh, yeah. I love this. Long may it continue.
Yes, thank you.
So this is such a hero's journey for us. It's, a mountain we didn't ask to climb, and yet suddenly we're halfway up it.
Yeah.
And now that you can, pause and take a look around and see where you are and that you're okay, what would you say to younger Jill, who really was terrified and didn't know that this was possible? What would you go back and tell younger you?
That just very simply that this is going to be okay, that this is going to be a very long journey, but also that this journey has provided the keys to the castle for me as well. And it does for us. It can. And it can take a very long time sometimes. For me, I'd put, not to put it in a neat little box, but about 25 years of really going through this, being on the side of that mountain and looking up, and there's still such a way to go, but also looking down and terrified for how much is, beneath as well, how much loss there's been as a result of this journey. But this is a journey of coming home to the self. And to me, I'm glad it's not going to take another 25 years, but, it's going to take what it takes, and it's going to bring you where you want to be. And I have known throughout this journey, and I have in myriad ways worked to contribute to help other people with these conditions. And I hope to this point that I have more resource and, oh my goodness, more everything to offer other people going through this, and to me and to my younger self as well, who also saw that as being such a dream.
All right. Yeah. I love this. So what I get from that is you here would let younger you know you're going to be okay. Firstly,
be okay.
It's soothing. It's going to take time. And what I hear in that is inviting acceptance. Like it will take time. And with that comes grief for what was lost. And that is crucial that we feel that in recovery. But that it's the keys to the castle. This is how you grow home.
Yes. And to me, that's what we're here to do. So by whatever these were for me in my life, and for you in your life, these were the means.
Indeed.
This is for whatever reason through this journey, this has been the path to get to that place. And it sounds so cheesy and cliche, but I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it.
Doesn't it? It takes quite something. I remember someone saying something similar to me at the start of my recovery, and I wanted to punch them in the face.
Oh, absolutely. And someone listening to this is probably, I understand. Absolutely.
I get it. Yeah. It's really, and I respect that too as a stage that we have to go through. Like, I don't want to put a silver lining around a turd.
No.
Saying, yes, it is a turd. This is the challenge of a lifetime. And it's really beyond awful a lot of the times. But there's an and. It's not an or. There's an and. There is hope. There are other people that are on the mountain with you. You might be able to see them, but we're all here.
Yeah.
And we are here. There is meaning. There is meaning in our struggle.
Yes. Yes. And with all of these things too, so when you said and, I heard end. And again, this is a journey, right? But we are told, those of us with these conditions, that there is no way out of this. Yes. And so even from being a very young, barely a teenager, I was either not believed by my physicians and my family, or I was told, this is terrible, what you have going on here, and you are only going to get worse. So buckle up, baby. You're in for a ride. And oh my goodness, to tell that little girl that you will do so much more than manage this. You will do so much more than manage this. There's a life so far beyond just managing this. There's life beyond these conditions.
I love that.
Yeah. There's a way out.
Yeah. There is. It's an incredibly brave thing when we're told by the medical system, my 8 diagnoses, your plethora of diagnoses, that no, this is it. And to have had enough something spark to keep going, it really, to me, shows the kind of fortitude of the human and
oh my goodness,
what we're capable of.
Yes. And I think also maybe because I was so young too, I think a particular benefit in that was likely that there were certain, shall we say, attributes or traits that the world kind of hadn't beaten out of me yet.
Yes.
I was young enough to say, wait, this isn't right.
Yes.
I don't believe you. I know I'm not making this up. I know what's going on here. And fortunately, there were enough people out there as well saying, oh, yeah. No, you can heal. You can get better. This doesn't have to be your life. So yeah, I think, my goodness, as just the first thing, if we can just open ourselves to the idea of
possibility.
of possibility, and of what you're being told, that this is not gospel.
No.
If anyone has told you this, they have no idea what they're talking about.
All right. So that
no idea.
None.
That's a beautiful thing.
Isn't it? All right.
Yes.
All these syndromes, and syndrome means collection of symptoms, but it's so scary to us. What would you say to somebody considering this work? Maybe they're tired of their tightrope, or maybe they really want to believe that maybe there's others on the mountain with them and it could be different. What would you say to someone considering this kind of work that we've done together?
I would say, please lean into that little tiny voice within you right now that is questioning whether this is something that could help you. Lean in as gently and as slowly, whatever it takes. For me, it was environmental illness, finally, which completely collapsed me, which led me to this kind of work. And it was a few years before you and I started working together that I started to lean into this, and I could see where it was so helpful and beneficial, but it still took years for me to break this idea. I did believe that I could heal. It's something that has been ingrained in me for whatever reason that is from the beginning, but this is such a different dynamic, that doing this work, connecting to the self, turning to the self for healing, rather than, and I know so many of us who have been down so many paths, of course, it's not just conventional medicine, it's holistic and functional medicine as well, where it's
everything.
You can just, it's you just lay back, honey, I'm going to do this to you or give you this, and you can just leave this appointment, go on your merry way, and you'll be better. And that's just not how that works.
No.
Can it be helpful? Absolutely. I've had people on my path in that way that they were integral to my journey, and I'm so deeply grateful to them. But just for me, understanding that it would take time to break that programming and truly understand what was going on here. Now I have no shadow of a doubt, and I have my recovery to back up that belief. It's not just a belief anymore.
Exactly.
Now it's embodied, living through this and knowing down to the core of my bones that this has been my truth, this path, and the, very personal, individualized way that I've walked it, and that, we've been able to finesse that together. But just to say, hey, my goodness, you have that tiny little piece of you that's saying this is possible for me. Please know that it is, lean into it, and know that it's not just for me, and perhaps for you as well. It may not be a matter of just flipping that switch and being like, okay, this is my understanding and knowing now. It takes time. It takes time. And that is so beyond okay. It takes whatever time it takes.
It does. I think, even with this neuroplasticity world and mind-body healing, there's those lucky buggers, and I do not resent them at all. All power to you. I used to. They heal very fast. They do a program and their system just switches.
Mm-hmm.
I think for those with developmental trauma, and I've worked with hundreds and hundreds now, it is normal. And it is okay that it is an incremental, safe, beautiful process to allow the system to come out of protection and start to hold vitality and feel better again. And so I love that that's your message to people. Listen to that little voice, lean in. There's a lot of answers in here. Get support from out here by all
means. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
But this is going to really guide you. And it may take some time, and truly that's all right.
It's beyond all right. It's part of, through this, what can be a long journey. So you and I have been working together for almost 2 years now. Yes. And it's cute too, right? I look back to that self that started working with you and I'm like, okay, Nadia, I've been doing some of this work. I have a foundation of understanding. I know the things that we're going to do. 3 months, 6 months, maybe.
It'll be fine. Just fine tune me and send me on my way.
Yeah, I just need a little tweak here. And I can remember coming to you and saying, I want for this work to be baked into my bones, for me to have this understanding. And the thing is that what I can tell someone who's coming in is that you, as much as you're trying to conceptualize what this may look like, this is a new way of being. If you have come to this point, you have these conditions, there are things that we need to learn about how we ended up.
Indeed.
And again, without any blame.
No.
Because there's none to be had. There's no pointing fingers. There's no shame in any of it. My goodness, not in the least. But every little step on this path, even though we may not be where we want to be along each of those steps necessarily, every one of them is so vitally important, and to sit with and to digest and to really come into a new understanding that, I mean, again, whatever your timeline is, as you've told me, is absolutely perfect. You are on time.
Yes.
I believe that wholly. Yes, you are right on time. And I can tell you, definitely, I had been familiar enough with you and your voice to that point, even before we started working with each other. But it was on time, but let's go. Let's, get this thing going.
I don't want to be here. Come on, British woman. Let's go.
Come on, I'm ready. But yeah, patience, and know that you can trust yourself wherever you're at.
Such a journey to get there for all of us. My recovery.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, mine was a good 3 years, probably 18 months or so to get to functional.
Yeah.
And then very, very slow, incrementally back into life in a very different way, because we're different people.
Yes.
So thank you for that too, that, we have things to learn and things to change. Our way of being that helped us survive doesn't feel good to the body or us anymore. And that making those changes, change is not easy. And it's against our nervous system's wish to stay stable and to stay safe in the known.
Yes.
So of course it makes sense that change is slow and steady, but that you learn, what I just heard is you learn to be okay with that. You learn also the skills of acceptance and building trust back again. And humor. We have laughed a lot. We've cried a lot.
Absolutely.
And laughed a lot. And I think that's one thing I would add too. Is your sense of humor has been such a gift. It helps, when you can hold the pain and also see some humor and light. So when you can grieve and also see green shoots, it is something I've seen in your system grow and grow, and it's beautiful, Jill.
Well, it means so much to hear, because again, the heaviness that can come along with this. And again, it seems to be such an across the board kind of experience where, you know, especially for those of us who have been debilitated by this, and there's such massive pressure
Indeed.
to get, first of all, I mean, here's another tangent, but getting back to where we were, to getting back on our feet.
Go back to that type A way of living. Yeah.
No, don't make me do it. But now it's like, oh, no, I don't want to go back to anything at all. But just this pressure that we put on ourselves, and this feeling of, well, you know, for me, it was, I'm taking up resources, I'm being supported by someone else, you know, I'm taking somebody else's resources. So I'm going to be so serious and, you know, not tend to anything else. Like my only job is to get back on my feet. And so much of that humor and joy and lightheartedness really went down with the rest of the ship. And so it means so much to be like, oh, there's humor there. There's
absolutely. It's how that's when we focus solely on our healing, there is nothing worse for this poor system.
No.
You know, this slice of pie that is our illness, there's so many more slices of pie that make up Jill that we needed to build roads back to your humor, your joy, your skating, your lightness. And that has brought in so much to the system too. So I like that as a message to people as well. Like, you can hold lightness. This doesn't need to be, they've got to heal this way.
We wouldn't treat anybody else like that, right?
Never.
You know, we wouldn't look at our puppy or our child and say, okay,
go full-time training. I know. So
never.
It's a really, really good message and healthy message. So for you, Jill, now that you are back to functionality and life is back online and you can enjoy being home in your beautiful city, where is your energy going to go next? Any short-term wishes or dreams, longer term? Where are you turning your attention to?
Well, attention at this point is going to ultimately be going back to school to be able to help others on this very path.
Wonderful.
And, you know, within that process also hopefully being on board with you and your community and being present with others, going through this journey and lending whatever I can to other people on their paths through Befriend.
I love this, Jill. You will be such a gift, such a profound gift to people that come into contact with you.
Oh, thank you. I so very much look forward to this new chapter moving forward. It's been what has felt like the training ground of my life, bringing me back into this moment to be able to move forward and to do what I believe I'm here to do.
I agree. You know, gifts here and wounds here. So many of us work with this, and then our gifts get to come to bear in the world. I really look forward to sharing yours with the world more. Jill, thank you so much for speaking.
Thank you, Nadia.
It's been so fun.
Thank you. It's been so wonderful. Thank you.